In March 1974, in a drought-scorched village outside the city of Xi'an, pronounced Xi'an, a farmer named Yang Jifa was digging a well. His hoe hit something hard. He pulled out a fragment of clay. Then another. Then something that looked like a head. He thought he had found a tile god, an old folk spirit buried in the dirt. He had no idea. What Yang Jifa had struck was the shoulder of a life-sized clay soldier. One of over 8,000, buried in military formation, armed with real weapons. Standing guard over the tomb of the most powerful and most feared man in Chinese history. For 2,200 years, this army had been waiting underground, invisible, forgotten. In total darkness, no ancient text mentions it. No map marks its location. No legend hints at its existence. 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, 520 horses, 40,000 bronze weapons. Each soldier with a unique face, no two the same. And yet, this army, the most extraordinary archaeological discovery of the 20th century, is just the beginning. Because behind the soldiers, buried under a 60-meter-high earth mound, lies the tomb of the emperor himself. A tomb that ancient historians describe as containing rivers of flowing mercury, a ceiling painted with the stars, and a floor carved as a map of the empire. A tomb that has never been opened. In 2,200 years, no one has gone inside. Not because they have not tried, but because they are afraid of what they might destroy. This is the story of the Terracotta Army, the man who created it, and the tomb that may hold the greatest undiscovered treasure on Earth. His name was Ying Zheng, pronounced Ying Zheng, born in 259 BCE. The son of a hostage prince and a concubine, he became king of the state of Qin, pronounced Qin, at the age of 13. At the time, China was not a country. It was a war zone. 7 kingdoms had been fighting each other for over 250 years. This era is called the Warring States period, and it produced some of the bloodiest centuries in human history. Ying Zheng inherited one of these kingdoms. Within 25 years, he would conquer the other 6, one by one, year by year, kingdom by kingdom. Until, In 221 BCE, there was nothing left to conquer. For the first time in over 5 centuries, the land from the eastern coast to the western deserts, from the northern steppes to the southern jungles, was ruled by one man. He needed a title. King was not enough. No one had ever done what he had done. So he invented a new word, Huangdi, pronounced Huangdi, emperor. He took the name Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. The word China itself comes from Qin. And then he did something that no conqueror before him had thought to do. He standardized everything, the writing system. Every kingdom had its own script. He unified them into one. The currency, 7 kingdoms, 7 different coins. He replaced them all with a single round coin with a square hole. Weights and measures, the width of wagon axles, so that every cart on every road would fit the same ruts. Even the law was rewritten into a single code. In less than a decade, he transformed a patchwork of cultures into something resembling a nation. And he did not stop there. He connected and extended the defensive walls along the northern border, the first version of what would later become the Great Wall. He built a network of roads radiating from his capital at Xianyang, pronounced Xianyang, linking every corner of his empire. And then he turned his attention to something far more personal. He wanted to live forever. Qin Shi Huang was terrified of death. He sent expeditions across the sea to search for the mythical islands of the immortals. One fleet, led by a man named Shu Fu, pronounced Shu Fu, sailed east with hundreds of young men and women. They never returned. He summoned alchemists to his court. They fed him mercury pills. They told him mercury was the elixir of life. It was the opposite. Mercury is a neurotoxin. It was slowly killing him. But the emperor did not know that. And while the alchemists searched for immortality above ground, an army of 700,000 workers was building it below. The construction of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum began in 246 BCE. The year he became king. He was 13 years old. Think about that. A 13-year-old boy ordered the construction of his own tomb. And the work continued for nearly 40 years. "700,000 conscripted workers, artisans, craftsmen, soldiers, prisoners from across the empire. For scale, at that time, the entire population of Athens was roughly 30,000 people. The workforce building this tomb was more than 20 times that number. And they were not building a grave. They were building an underground empire. The ancient historian Sima Qian, pronounced Suh Ma Qi-en, writing about a century after the emperor's death, described what lay beneath the earth mound. He wrote that the burial chamber contained a model of the entire empire, rivers and seas of flowing mercury. A ceiling encrusted with pearls to represent the stars, a floor carved with the geography of the land. Crossbows set as booby traps, rigged to fire automatically at anyone who entered. For 2,000 years, historians debated whether Sima Qian was telling the truth or writing propaganda. Then, in the 1980s, scientists tested the soil around the tomb mound. The mercury levels were extraordinarily high, concentrated in patterns that matched the ancient descriptions of rivers and lakes. Sima Qian was not making it up. There is mercury under that mound, a lot of it, but the tomb itself has never been opened. And the reason it remains sealed tells you something important. Not about ancient China, about modern archaeology. In the early days of the Terracotta Army excavation, archaeologists made a discovery that changed everything. The warriors were not grey. They were painted. Vivid reds, greens, purples, blues, pinks, black, and white. Full military uniforms, rendered in precise and brilliant color. But the paint was adhered to the clay with a layer of lacquer. After 2,000 years underground, this lacquer was waterlogged and swollen. When the figures were exposed to Xi'an's dry air, the lacquer began to curl within 15 seconds. The paint flaked off in as little as 4 minutes. Archaeologists watched, helpless, as the colors of a 2,000-year-old army disintegrated before their eyes. This single experience is the primary reason China has refused to open the emperor's tomb. If the outer army lost its colors in minutes, what would happen to whatever is inside the sealed burial chamber? The mercury, the pearl-studded ceiling, the crossbow traps. China's official policy is clear. Preserve first. Excavate only when necessary. They are waiting for technology that does not yet exist. for methods that can protect what 2,000 years of darkness have kept intact. The tomb of the first emperor of China remains the largest unopened tomb in the world, and it may stay that way for decades or centuries. Meanwhile, the army that guards it has already told us more than anyone expected. Every soldier in the Terracotta Army has a unique face. 8,000 warriors, 8,000 different expressions, hairstyles, mustaches, jawlines, cheekbones. No two are identical. This was not an accident. The figures were manufactured in workshops using an assembly line method. Bodies, legs, arms, heads, each produced separately from molds, then assembled. This much is standardized, but the faces are not. After the basic head shape was molded, artisans applied additional layers of clay by hand, sculpting the nose, adjusting the brow, adding facial hair, changing the expression. Each face was finished individually. Some scholars believe the faces were modeled on real soldiers from the Qin army. Men from different regions, different ethnic backgrounds, different ranks. Look at them closely, and you see the diversity of the Qin Empire itself. Northern soldiers with broad features, southern soldiers with narrower faces, officers with elaborate top knots, infantry with simple caps, archers caught mid-draw, generals standing in authority, kneeling crossbowmen with their weapons raised, each one frozen in a posture of readiness. For 2,200 years, and they were not carrying replicas. The weapons are real. Over 40,000 bronze artifacts have been recovered from the pits. Swords, spears, lances, daggers, battle axes, halberds, and crossbow bolts. Many of them are still sharp, after 22 centuries underground. The crossbows are particularly remarkable. The bronze trigger mechanisms are composed of multiple precisely cast parts. They fit together with a tolerance of less than 0.05 millimeters. 0.05 of a millimeter. That is a level of manufacturing precision that the Western world would not achieve for another 2,000 years. And the bolts, over 40,000 recovered, are virtually identical in their dimensions, each one interchangeable with any crossbow. This is not artisan craftsmanship. This is industrial standardization, mass production, interchangeable parts, quality control, 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. In an empire where the emperor himself was obsessed with standardization, one script, one currency, one law. Even the army's weapons were standardized down to hundredths of a millimeter. For decades, another mystery puzzled archaeologists. How were the bronze swords still so sharp after 2,000 years? No rust, no corrosion. Initial analysis found traces of chromium on the blade surfaces. This led to a stunning theory that the Qin had invented chromium plating, a technique not reinvented in the West until 1938. It was a beautiful story, and like many beautiful stories in archaeology, it turned out to be more complicated than it seemed. In 2019, researchers demonstrated that the chromium was likely contamination from lacquer that had dissolved off the weapon's wooden handles. The real reason the sword survived was simpler and in some ways more interesting: the soil itself. The burial environment, slightly alkaline with fine-grained particles, naturally inhibited corrosion. The Qin engineers did not coat the blades in chromium. They buried them in the perfect soil. Whether by design or by luck, the earth itself preserved the weapons of the first emperor. But the most unsettling question about the Terracotta Army is not about the weapons, or the faces, or even the mercury rivers. It is about the people who built it. 700,000 workers built the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang. We do not know how many of them survived. Ancient texts mention that after the emperor's burial, the inner gates of the tomb were sealed, with the workers still inside. The men who knew the secrets of the tomb were entombed with it. Sima Qian's account is explicit. The craftsmen who installed the mechanical traps were locked inside so that they could never reveal the tomb's layout. How many died? The texts do not say, but the implication is that the number was not small. Around the main mound, archaeologists have found mass graves. Over 100 skeletons, many showing signs of forced labor, some still in shackles. These are not soldiers. These are builders. The Terracotta Army is one of the great wonders of the ancient world. But like every ancient wonder, the pyramids, the Parthenon, the Colosseum, it was built on human suffering. And the suffering did not end with the tomb. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE. He was 49 years old. He died on a tour of his empire, hundreds of kilometers from his capital. The cause is debated by historians. The most widely accepted theory is mercury poisoning. Ironic, given that the rivers of mercury in his tomb were meant to symbolize his eternal reign. The man who spent his life searching for immortality may have been killed by the very substance his alchemists told him would grant it. His death was kept secret. His prime minister, Li Si, pronounced Li Su, and the chief eunuch, Zhao Gao, pronounced Zhao Gao, concealed the emperor's death during the long journey back to the capital.
Before dawn, or the plan is ruined.
They placed carts of rotting fish around the emperor's carriage to mask the smell of decomposition. Then they forged a letter, supposedly from the emperor, ordering his eldest son and most capable heir to commit suicide. The eldest son obeyed. He killed himself. And a weaker, more controllable son, Hu Hai, pronounced Hu Hai, was placed on the throne as the second emperor. Within 4 years, the empire collapsed. Rebellions erupted across the land. The Terracotta Army's construction was abruptly halted in 208 BCE. Unfinished figures were abandoned in the workshops. The mausoleum was never completed. The Qin dynasty lasted 15 years. 15 years. The shortest major dynasty in Chinese history, an empire built on the promise of 10,000 generations, ended in 2. But the army underground remained, patient, silent, in perfect formation. Waiting for an emperor who would never return. The Terracotta Army is one of the most studied archaeological sites on Earth. And yet, a remarkable number of fundamental questions remain unanswered. Here is what we still do not know. We do not know who designed the army. There is no record of a chief architect, a master sculptor, or a lead engineer. 700,000 workers, and not a single name of a designer has survived. We know more about the architects of the Forbidden City, built 1700 years later, than we know about the mind behind the Terracotta Army. We do not know why there are 3 pits instead of 1. Pit 1 is the main army, over 6,000 warriors in 11 corridors. Pit 2 is a mixed force of cavalry, infantry, chariots, and kneeling archers. Pit 3 is a small command post with 68 figures. There is also a Pit 4. It is completely empty, dug out, but never filled. Was the army unfinished, interrupted by the emperor's death, or was the empty pit left intentionally? A deliberate void in the design. No one knows. We do not know whether the faces were modeled on real people. The individuality is stunning. 8,000 distinct faces suggest that real soldiers served as models. But no inscription, no record, no document confirms this. Are these portraits of living men, or the imaginations of anonymous artisans? We do not know what color the army was. We know the warriors were painted. We know some of the pigments. We have fragments of color preserved on a few figures. But we have never seen the full army in its original painted state. We never will. The colors were lost the moment they touched the air. And we do not know what is inside the tomb. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed complex structures beneath the mound. Multiple levels, chambers. Patterns consistent with Sima Qian's description of a palace. Mercury is confirmed, but the interior, the ceiling, the floor, the sarcophagus, the treasures, remains entirely unknown. In 2024, archaeologists excavated a satellite burial near the main mound. They found a 16-ton sarcophagus and valuable artifacts that may confirm historical accounts of internal purges within the Qin court. But the central tomb remains untouched. Here is the paradox of the first emperor's tomb. He spent 40 years building it so that he could live inside it forever. He sealed it so that no one would ever enter. And we are honoring his wish. Not out of respect for his authority, but out of respect for what his tomb might still contain. The irony is extraordinary. The most paranoid emperor in Chinese history, the man who burned books, buried scholars, and executed anyone who threatened his power, is now protected by the very people he would have considered his enemies. Scientists, archaeologists, scholars, they are the guardians of his tomb, and they are waiting. Yang Jifa received 300 yuan for his discovery. That was roughly his annual salary as a farmer. 300 yuan for the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century. He later worked at the Terracotta Army Museum, sitting at a table near the gift shop, signing books for tourists. The man who discovered an army of 8,000 warriors spent his later years as a minor celebrity. Tourists would take photographs with him, ask him to sign their guidebooks. It is a strange image. A farmer who could not have imagined what lay beneath his field. Sitting in a museum built over the field, he had tried to dig a well in, signing books about a discovery that changed the world's understanding of ancient China. The distance between Yang Jifa and Qin Shi Huang is not just 2,000 years. It is everything that those 2,000 years contain. One was a farmer looking for water. The other was an emperor looking for eternity. Both dug into the same earth. One found what the other spent a lifetime trying to hide. The Terracotta Army was never meant to be found. It was never meant to be seen. It was built for an audience of one, an emperor in the afterlife. And yet, here we are, over 2 million visitors a year, walking between the rows of soldiers. Looking into faces that were sculpted to look back at a dead man. The soldiers stand at attention. They have been standing at attention for 22 centuries. Their weapons are still sharp. Their formation is still intact. Their emperor is still sealed in his tomb, surrounded by rivers of mercury and a ceiling of artificial stars. And beneath the mound, in the one place where no camera, no drone, no satellite, no human eye has penetrated in over 2,000 years, something waits. We do not know what it is. We are not ready to find out. But one day, the technology will exist. The methods will be developed. And someone will open the tomb of the first emperor of China. When they do, they will answer questions that have been asked for 22 centuries. Or they will discover that the answers are more unsettling than the questions. In the museum in Xi'an, there is a glass case containing a single terracotta warrior. He stands alone, separated from his unit, under a spotlight. His face is calm. His hands are positioned as if holding a weapon that is no longer there. There is a faint trace of red paint near his collar. He is one of 8,000, but in that case, under that light, he is just one. A clay soldier made by an anonymous artisan for an emperor who believed he would live forever, buried in the dark for 22 centuries. And brought back to the light by a farmer looking for water, one soldier at a time. Qin Shi Huang unified China, but his empire lasted only 15 years. What rose from its ashes endured for over 2,000. A network of roads, ideas, and goods that stretched from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, connecting China to Rome, silk to silver, east to west. It had no single builder, no single emperor, no single name, until a German geographer gave it one in 1877. The Silk Road. That is our next story. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And if you know someone who would want to stand face to face with 8,000 soldiers who have been waiting in the dark since before the Roman Empire, share this with them. The terracotta army was built one soldier at a time. So is an audience.